welcome to Grow Conversations, your window into the world of medical cannabis. I'm your host, Alex Fraser, and on this episode, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Dalgety. Dalgety is a cannabis cultivation facility here in the United Kingdom, producing prescription cannabis medicines. One of the very first of its kind, possibly the first in England. We'll delve into this. My guests on this episode are James Leavesley, CEO of Dalgety, and Brady Green, who is the head grower.
Yes.
Head grower at Dalgety. Oh, so before we even get started, we've got leaves on one side and green on the other. That's too perfect.
Yeah, there's been a few funny comments already about that when we announced our licensing, but
we did not change our names for this.
No, these are
meant to be, I guess.
These aren't pseudonyms or anything like that. No, it's fantastic. All right, guys. Well, look, to get started, I think it would be really interesting for our viewers to get an idea of your background as professionals. What were you doing before this, and how did you end up here at Dalgety? I'll start with James, if that's all right.
Yeah, well, Brady and I had very different backgrounds before coming into this, but I was formerly in the oil and gas business and was, very good at numbers and analysing investments and things for that. But then left that industry and ended up working for a property company, and we were looking at different investments and things like that. And then when the law changed back in 2018, we decided to go into cannabis. So I had no experience in cannabis before Dalgety at all. Which is very different to Brady and his experience, I guess.
Which is why you're here, I presume.
Exactly. So yeah, my background, I've been in the legal cannabis space for just over 10 years, primarily in Canada. I worked for a big producer there. We had a 12.5 acre glass house. That's producing around 50,000 kilos a year. We also had indoor, outdoor, you name it. And then I spent a couple of years consulting, which is when I met James, and yeah, we've been working on this project since about 2020. So
amazing. So it's taken a long time to get us here. It's 2025. You said the idea happened in 2018. You've been together working on this since 2020.
Since 2020, yeah.
So talk us through. Obviously, it's years for you guys. I'm gonna make you summarise that in as brief as you can make it for us, James, if you can.
Yeah, sure. So law changed 2018. We drew our initial business plan together during 2019. And then if you fast forward to 2021, we took over the building that we're sitting in now, had our first MHRA engagement in 2021 where we presented them, this is our understanding of the current licensing and our plan in order to do everything compliantly all the way through, and they agreed with our process. We managed to get the first seed round of fundraising in 2021 as well. During 2022, we had 3 or even 4 different audits from the MHRA, the Home Office, both desktop and actually physically on site. Mm-hmm. And we got our license to start cultivating in January 2023. And bearing in mind for the last 2 years, we're only releasing product in January 2025. We've been growing multiple batches, putting through rigorous testing in order to have a safe and compliant product and to be able to prove it to regulators before that final release. Yeah. And here we are now.
It's fascinating the amount of time it takes. One of the questions I get asked all the time from industry, patients alike, is how do you go about setting up a cultivation facility in the UK? And I think why is there so little UK product in the market, considering the law change was in 2018? And you've answered that perfectly there, which is it literally takes years. You've got to raise the investment, that's years. You've got to build this facility, that's years. Yeah. And then I guess the product R&D. So
there's also one of the challenges as well is when you first, we had our first scientific advice meeting 2021, and then when you apply for an audit, they don't have to turn up for 20 weeks, and then you pass the audit for the MHRA, and so 6 months, and then 5-6 months later, the Home Office turn up, and then 5 or 6 months later, the MHRA come back, and then 5 or 6 months later, you get the final supply license. So we had 2 years of waiting for a regulator to turn up and come and see us, and that's half the amount of time. The rest is actually building, growing, testing. The rest of it was, waiting for the regulator.
And why do you think that is? Why is it taking? Is that just? Is there a one-word answer? It's bureaucracy, or are they not talking these different agencies to each other enough? Or
I think they are now. Okay. I think originally when the law changed, I don't think they really set themselves up to understand how to regulate it properly. Mm-hmm. I think they're much better at that now. We also had COVID at the same time during the setup phase. So the MHRA had arguably more important things with the vaccines and things like that they were putting all their resource to. And now, that seems to have smoothed out, and you get a lot more quicker responses now.
Maybe just the pain of being the first mover or one of the first movers in the space.
Comes with every aspect of running the business, really. All
This is pioneering, though, so it's exciting. What have been the biggest challenges, other than the regulators, which we've covered? What have sort of been the biggest challenges for you in getting this set up? What have been the moments where you just had your head in your hands and thought this might never happen?
The time was the biggest one. I mean, when you do any business plan and setting up a new company, you have how much is it going to cost to build, but then how much working capital, so how much money do you need during the setup phase before you have revenue? And, you'd be forgiven to say that you need 12 months or 18 months. We've needed 4 years, capital to be able to pay, people that work here and the actual running costs of the facility before getting revenue. But then there's the wider issues as well of, the whole stigma of cannabis and, getting that support from all aspects of society as well, which is one of the key things that, you've been working so hard on as well to break down that stigma.
Just on that point, it's not one of my questions written down, but I'm curious, did you have any issues in terms of hiring? I presume not with Brady, with his backstory and his background in cannabis in Canada, but did you have any difficulty hiring people to work in a facility like this because of it being cannabis?
We had lots of applications, and we were in the early stages. We didn't mention we wanted a horticulturalist, and there's not too many people that apply for those positions. The initial grower that came just after Brady, we used a specialist recruiter just to manage that for us. And then one of the recruitment rounds, we decided, let's just put cannabis grower and see what happens. And we had 2,000 applications in 72 hours. Wow. So I had to take it down. And because you had, lots of people just wanting to get involved and not necessarily for the right reasons. So we learned from a mistake there.
So the opposite is true. It's not that people are worried about working in cannabis, but they're actually potentially over-eager.
Yeah, exactly. And then, we're very clear and upfront to say we have to do all the background checks as well, because they're working with controlled drugs, and the Home Office expect us to do certain levels of clearances, criminal record checks, and we have an obligation to repeat those throughout as well, just to make sure that we can trust all our team, which we do.
Fantastic. So Brady, I feel like potentially the answer to this question might be a bit obvious from what we've heard from James so far, but what are the key differences for you from your time working in cannabis in Canada to the UK?
It's just the time, really. Like it started very similarly, kind of being over-regulated, with regulators being unsure. And I think that is the right approach. Is figure it out and then kind of open up as you go. And it feels a little bit stepping back in time a couple of years, and it's the same path, really. So not a lot of differences. Yeah, just basically the timing of things happening, and the market is a little more educated and a little more
in Canada
existing. Currently, yes, but I mean, just starting off, it was since Canada was the first country really pushing with a federal medical market like that. It was really completely unheard of, and we had a lot of difficulties basically making things commercial, essentially, because there was no one that had done it before, and there was again experience growing before that and building glass houses and stuff, but trying to bring that together with the pharmaceutical industry was quite challenging. And where you testing, all of that stuff was a challenge initially. And so we at least have some information to go on, and a lot of the systems I developed in Canada was able to bring with me here and kind of do it right the first time, which has been our goal all along.
That was one of the key things that when we first started working together, it was a consultancy basis, and we needed to leverage Brady or the Canada's market and knowledge beforehand. And we were looking for head growers based in the UK that could have experience in growing cannabis, but also to a commercial scale as well. And they didn't really exist in the UK, so hence why we're thankful that Brady moved over here.
Yeah, ship Brady over here in a box that's marked cannabis expert, fragile, rare species.
I mean, applying for a visa was exciting as well. And what are you going to be here to do? And we had to, it's the challenge of, being the first one. Tell the guys at the visa office, what are you here to do? Grow cannabis. You have to show all of the the roadmap to say this is why it's okay to
And they
do.
didn't put a stop on your visa. They didn't start questioning you. They weren't.
We were, you think, oh, we're just going to call you a general grower. And it's like, no, you've got to be honest, and that's the approach we've taken throughout everything, really. And
Open and transparent. And we were just talking about patients consuming in public and the fear that they have, and they say, oh, maybe I should hide it. I'm like, don't hide it. You don't have to hide it anymore. And also, if you do hide it, it always looks like it's an admission of guilt, isn't it, basically? You don't want to be doing that. So let's talk a bit about what it means to be growing here in the United Kingdom. What are the advantages of a domestic grow for the patients here? To either of you on that one.
I think that generally people say, if you know where the plant started in life and then, where it's ending up, one of the arguments is there's the transparency for the regulator throughout every stage of the process, and equally doctors as well, can see the whole stage of the process. But I think the benefit for the patients themselves is, the speed that we can get our product to them. It doesn't have to go through customs warehouses that it might be sitting there for, a few weeks and get tied up and delayed. We can actually, when we're fully up and running and moving products, through your team, is we can finish our curing and packing stage. It takes, on average, 2 weeks to do all of the tests required, and then we can ship it directly to you. And within another 2 weeks, it could be in a patient's hand. So from finishing, the final package here, it could be in a patient's hand inside 3, maybe 4 weeks.
Amazing. And that freshness is something that I know from speaking to a lot of patients is a really important factor. On the reverse side, because some of the complaints that we do get now and again are related to freshness or lack thereof, and it is exactly what you've described. It's the having to ship things internationally, delays on tests and other things that might be happening in other countries. We can do all that here in the UK. You're doing most of it in-house here, presumably testing third party and then straight to patients. That's fantastic. I am fascinated to see whether that's the response that we'll get from patients and whether they'll notice that from UK cultivators generally, but particularly from you guys, because I know you've tried really hard to make that as short as it could possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the comparison with other countries, because I think from I suppose more of a business, a B2B or even an investment point of view, the concern, if you don't mind me using that word, for UK cultivation is it's going to be more costly than other countries. Places like Portugal, South America, the two main costs involved, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's labour and energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how are UK cultivators going to maintain that sort of competitive advantage over what might be able to be done cheaper elsewhere?
There's two things. We'll never be able to produce the cheapest product, and these mass. Brady said he worked on a 12.5 acre glass house. That level of mass production, we'll never be able to get a cost per gram that low.
No.
That being said, we're fully indoor here at the moment, so quality is our absolute, first and foremost. But then again, we've got to be competitive as well. And one of the things that we aim to do is we focus on yield a lot, and that's not just overall yield of wet weight. That's the final product that goes to the patient. And there was a survey that was done, I think it was the Business of Cannabis that conducted it. And they said, we looked at the survey results and what the average yields are for an indoor grower. And the average for, I think it's about 30 different growers across North America and Europe, was 2,000 to 2,200 grams per square metre per year.
Sure.
And we said, well, that's what average is. What's the top person in the survey? What have they achieved? And I think they managed to achieve, I think it was 3,000 to 3,200, so 50% above what the average are doing. And I think Dalgety's last 5 or 6 harvests, we've averaged 5,400 grams per square metre per year. So we're over double the average yield, and then almost, not quite, 1.5 times what the top 1% of the world. So if our energy cost is double, which it's not going to be, and if our wage cost is double, which it's not going to be, of these other, cheaper producers, but our yield is also double or more, then that means that the cost per gram price that goes to a patient can be competitive. And that really works on scale as well. We're only, we're quite small, starting out still. We've got big and high ambitions. We're hoping that in the next 18 months, 2 years, we'll be able to ship to 5.5 times the amount out of this. And so general overheads as well, on a cost per gram basis, will all come down.
Can you tell us before you move on how much in sort of total you will be able to ship from this facility in a year or in a month or whatever?
So currently we can do about enough for 4,000 prescriptions a month.
Okay.
And then as of, it will be 5.5 times larger.
Wow.
So yeah, considerably more. But there's a lot of work to do to get there. We need to build more grow rooms and bring that online and get the MHRA and the Home Office back to re-inspect us and things. But yeah.
Well, let's talk a bit more about those inspections, and I guess why you're having those inspections to do with your licenses. We're going to talk a little bit about sort of quality assurance and regulatory standards and some of this nitty gritty. I hope that's all right. So talk us through the license process. Talk us through which licenses you have, and I guess if you can explain a little bit about why they're important as well.
Yeah. So we started out. We had a desktop audit from the MHRA, and that was to produce the API, an active pharmaceutical ingredient.
Yep.
So as a bulk format that it comes in. We did the desktop audit for that, and then we had a Home Office inspection to say, can you cultivate controlled drugs? And a Schedule 1 controlled drug license, so the highest drug scheduling possible. We managed to achieve that, but that was only to cultivate. That wasn't able to sell it. Then we had to come back and we had to do some validation batches to prove consistency. So we do stability tests to see how long the shelf life of the product is going to be and calculate that final expiry or retest date. But then we also had to do uniformity across all of the batch as well. So one question is, if you pull one flower out of the room, how do you know that that's uniform to the whole room that you're producing? And there's the MHRA and pharmaceutical manufacturers have guidance on how to do that. So doing all these uniformity checks is a requirement of the MHRA to be able to have a consistent API product to come to market. So then we did all of that, presented it to the MHRA, and they gave us the permission to be able to sell it. Then you have to go back to the Home Office, and the Home Office have to change their license to be able to, for the commercial supply, to be able to sell it. Again, you wait the 6 months for them to turn up, and they finally give you that authorization, which we received about two or three months ago.
Wow. It's not a short process, not simple in any sense.
No, and the regulators are learning as much as we are as well, and so it's I think that's why there's the time lag there.
Sure. If I can talk to you, Brady, a little bit about what does that mean in terms of the practicalities? What are you having to do as the head grower to make sure that you're meeting all the specifications needed for these licenses? The consistency, I think, is going to be a big part of that, isn't it?
Definitely.
How does that work? How do you even begin to make a cannabis product that works in these pharmaceutical settings? How does that work from your point of view?
Exactly. Quality and consistency is the key and is the challenging part. And a lot of producers can produce good batches time to time, but doing it consistently every time is challenging. So a lot of thought went into when we built this place and make sure we were doing it right. And really starts with like the environmental controls. So we have really incredibly high level of controls in the facility. We can maintain temperatures to 0.1 degrees Celsius, relative humidity to 0.1%, and that really allows us to be able to repeat batches again and again and be consistent. On that same note, quality in regards to medical cannabis is cleanliness and having a low microbial load and not being contaminated with heavy metals and pesticides, stuff like that. So with it's about inputs. So we test all of our fertilizers before use to ensure there's no heavy metals. We don't spray any pesticides or pest control products at all. So there's no chance of that ever ending up in our products. And again, with to avoid mold and stuff, it's that climate control, and we don't have temperature swings and humidity swings, which can stress the plant out and lead to dew point happening and basically getting condensation on the plants, which can grow micros. So a lot of it is just front loading as much in the design phase as we can, and having those great controls. So.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean it's a little over my head. I have to say, I live in this world and I talk this world, but you guys, head growers are another breed entirely, and I think I'm sure see James Smiley, you can attest to that.
Yeah, I know. Every time you ask Brady a question, you scratch the surface, and I mean we'd be here for weeks just to uncover everything, I think.
Gift and a curse.
Let's talk about GMP, because I think that's a really important part of what you guys have achieved here at Dalgety as well. Are you the first UK cultivator with GMP? Is that fair to say?
No, that there are others that have GMP and are governed by the MHRA. As far as I'm aware, we're the only medical cannabis cultivator that can sell medical cannabis flower as a GMP product, which is 85-90% of all prescriptions at the moment. So.
I was going to say that is the vast bulk of prescriptions, the vast bulk of medicines going out to patients, and I guess gives you a fair advantage there from the point of view of from the point of view of your competitors, I suppose. No, that's fantastic, and wasn't easy to achieve that GMP, I presume. How does that come about? I don't want you to spill your secret sauce and give everyone else the same competitive advantage, but how did you achieve that? How did that happen?
I think it's all down to, the growing side and the level of control that Brady's been through and sort of briefly mentioned. And then it's the level of testing as well, and just how do you know that the sample that you test is representative of the whole batch? And that was a key thing that the regulator needs to understand is, did you get lucky by picking that sample, or is that fair and representative? And I think that we have probably done 700, maybe 750 quality control tests on our product over the last 2 years. So there's not a lot we don't know about the plant that we're able to ship. And we can actually, stand in front of a regulator and anybody and just show evidence of why we are, can get that consistent product, not just throughout the batch, but time and time again.
Let's talk a little bit more about the sort of actual day-to-day, the grow operation, if you will, Brady. What are the sort of different stages for someone who's new to this whole concept of growing cannabis? Because it's not as simple as just putting a seed in the ground and waiting, is it? So you've got different rooms for different things.
Definitely not.
Yeah, talk us through that if you wouldn't mind.
So I guess all the genetics did initially start with a seed. We actually brought our initial genetics in as a tissue culture from Canada. Actually, a lot of that is time to market, really. And if we were going to go through seeds, every seedling is different. Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that. And even if the same strain, you can get a lot of variability, and it's siblings. Both
it's not seeds at all. I led you in there perfectly.
That's it.
Sorry, Karen.
No, that's it. And both my siblings have blonde hair. There's differences, in close related genetics. So, anyways, we decided to start with tissue culture so we could basically take that and multiply one variety out. And one of the challenges we had, as James was mentioning with all this, with testing, is we needed to prove reproducibility, and we could repeat our same procedures, and basically we would get the same product doing that. And we thought that would have been a lot more challenging to do if we had every plant in the building was different at the time. So that was kind of our initial approach and from those we made basically mother plants. So mother plants are plants that we keep in the vegetative stage, so they never flower, which is what medical cannabis in the end is, the female flowers of the plants. So we keep these plants basically as a genetic library, and our production batch process basically starts from taking cuttings of those. We call cloning, because everything is a genetic identical representation of that same plant. We ensure they're the same size, we have the same leaf surface area, the same caliper of stems, to really try to get that batch as uniform as possible. And that starts really at that stage. That stage takes about 2 weeks, where we develop roots and get the plants to start growing. And then we enter a vegetative stage where basically we grow those plants a little bit bigger. We start developing root mass and getting ready for flowering. We have quite a short veg cycle. It's 7 to 21 days, depending on varieties. Most really on the shorter end of that. And then we begin the flowering phase, where we run a long night, 12 hours of darkness. That's basically the rest of the plant cycle. They spend 8 to 10 plus weeks in there. Basically they grow up, produce flowers. And then after that, there's a harvesting period. We cut the plants down, we hang everything upside down. We slow dry the plants. It takes about 2 weeks. And that's a really key part of quality as well. After that, we begin a curing and trimming process. We remove all the leaves. All of our product is hand trimmed at the moment, again, which really just lets us put out top quality product. Yeah, and after that, a small curing period, again, depending on the strain, which just helps break down any remaining chlorophyll, homogenize moisture, all that kind of stuff. And then it's finally packed up and ready to be shipped to you guys.
Amazing. And we're very, very close to getting the first shipment, aren't we? What's the date today? Is it the 22nd, 23rd of January? I'm forgetting.
Yeah. Days.
But we're days away from getting that first shipment out the door here.
Yeah.
It's amazing. From inception in 2018, just to hark back to that earlier bit of the conversation. Let's talk about sterilisation, because there's one part of that the pipeline there that perhaps is a bit later on. Is this something that was new to you, Brady? Was sterilisation something that you were doing as part of the operations in Canada?
Yeah. So, it was part of the process in Canada. So we kind of talked about our hygiene earlier, and we do that stuff, and we try to reduce microbial load as much as possible in every crop, every time. That's never in question. But basically, what it comes down to is the standards that we need to hit, and that changes between Canada, Germany, or here in the UK, and currently regulations in the UK are very, very strict. So all of our product basically has to meet guidelines in the European Pharmacopoeia, which is basically a big giant book on how to make medicines and all of that stuff. And so we go by two guidelines, which is section 5.1.4, 5.1.8. Sounds really messy, but basically it's a section that tells us how many what kind of microbial load we can allow, basically.
Does it need to be?
Exactly. And so just to kind of quantify things, Canada started a very similar stage and limits in as the UK.
Oh, really?
And as time has gone on and kind of studies were done, they actually laxed up a bit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But basically, it was unnecessary to be that sterile, and you could take a dirty product, and you could sterilize it with either radiation or some other means, and you could have a product that passed, but yet was full of dead spores and stuff, which actually could be more problematic than having some things alive in there. So Canada's current limits are 5.1.8C, which is 500,000 aerobic bacteria and 50,000 yeast and mold. Again, those numbers, they sound really high, and it's hard to comprehend. But if you imagine, you just wash your hands, you have tens of thousands of bacteria and microbes still in your hand. On just a normal instance, you can have, millions, tens of millions of microbes. Quantify the UK at the moment, we can have 50,000 aerobic bacteria, which is good bacteria actually, but we can only have 500 counts yeast and mold.
Wow.
So colony forming units. So whether it's just a spore or something in there, that is leagues away from visible mold or anything like that.
It's virtually nothing, 500.
It is virtually sterile, which, you imagine a crop, I just explained the process, and it can be from seed to harvest can be 4 months, and a lot of that is in a room that's 70% humidity. So, plants like the same conditions as microbes, unfortunately. So that is a difficult part of the process, but it's just a fact of life if you're in the cannabis industry in the UK. So, one of the common methods is irradiation, and I'm kind of glad we're talking about it, because it is a hot topic at the moment, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. And I refer to it as radiation, and most people do as well. And people hear that, it's like radioactive, so I'm making my cannabis radioactive, and that is, couldn't be further from the truth at all. In a lot of cases, gamma radiation, they use a radioactive source to make an ion that sterilizes. We use an E-beam, which is basically just an electron beam made from electricity, and as that beam comes in, it can basically sterilize the product. I guess the key point to really hit on is that not all irradiation is the same. So you see stuff listed as irradiated and non-irradiated in the UK, but people don't have to list that they've irradiated if they've used non-ionizing irradiation. So there's sonic treatments, UV treatments, and things that people use that they don't have to list, but it's basically doing the same thing to the product versus gamma or E-beam, which we use. which is ionizing, which basically just means it can free up an electron in what it's hitting, and that can basically work as an oxidizer, and you have like a free radical reaction kind of thing. But really the key is how much of a dose are you giving something?
Yeah.
So because we've put so much in place to keep our microbial load very low, we don't want to give the same treatment that everyone would give, or that someone, I mentioned earlier, that has a dirty product would give to have to sterilize those kind of loads. And so, we mentioned the struggles of being first in the UK, but one of the benefits is we can kind of steer that in a way that suits us best and not everybody else. So we use literally the lowest dose possible, and that is the real advantage of E-beam over gamma irradiation, is that we can have a very uniform dose at a low dose. Okay. So, we kind of use the reference of, if you broke your hand, you would never question getting an X-ray at the doctor. But there's no way that you would ever leave your hand in there for 8 hours straight getting, right? And that is what is happening in most instances. So
with gamma, or
with just all treatments in general, it could be UV or sonic or anything, and it's just what load is in there. You need more of a dose to treat that. So giving the absolute lowest dose possible is kind of our strategy.
And we can't actually, the machine's set up, and we can't actually give a lower dose possible.
Just the lowest possible dose of...
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to be inaccurate here, but I think that gamma irradiation averages at about 60 kilograms and goes up to 100 kilograms, the way that you measure dose.
Yeah.
We're at 5.
Okay, wow.
So we're like really, really, light moment.
I think this is one of the common misconceptions, is it's it's an on-off switch, like, it's been irradiated, therefore it's like all irradiated flour is all the same, and that's just irradiated or none, and those are the only, and then there's two different types. I think people are aware of gamma and E-beam now in the sort of patient communities and industry in general, but the idea that the extent to which you are producing a clean product irradiation, pre-sterilization, will mean you use less of it. Yeah. So that, essentially there's been less radiation in products that have been, grown better, but grown in a cleaner way.
And it's just the input and the level of control during the growing process and the drying process that actually makes the key difference into it all.
So I remember we were talking some time ago, when you were still in the process of setting things up and getting things ready for market, about whether or not you were going to irradiate. And I remember you weren't sure. It very much depends on the tests coming back and finding out, whether you're going to have to add that treatment to the pipeline in order to get the product onto the market. And clearly we've had to do that, presumably because the UK regulations are so strict. But I remember you you attempted to go down the non-irradiated route, and to get as close to that as you could. So
I think I mentioned we'd done 750 quality control tests.
Yes.
And we'd found that 95% would have been absolutely fine. But that's not
non-irradiated, fine, non-irradiated.
Absolutely fine. Yeah. So that's absolutely, that's 95% is not good enough.
No.
It needs to be 100%. So there is zero risk of any product ever being released with a higher amount of microbe than is the 500 limit. Just to remind us, Brady said, if you wash your hands, you've probably got 10,000 microbes on there. Yeah. And so you're almost an aseptic product, which is the requirement that we hit. But we need to make sure that we do that every single time and consistently. And, are these levels, too onerous? That's not for us to decide. That's for the medical regulator to be able to tell us that that's the level amount. And if you have a immunosuppressed patient that is inhaling into their lungs, vapor from a cannabis plant, you don't want any in there. You want zero in there. And that's the level of approach that we've taken, and the standard that we're aiming to hit.
That's really reassuring. I guess for those who are watching who might have a prescription, make sure you wash your hands, basically. Once you open that pot, if you're going to have a look in and get your fingers over it, then you ruin these guys' very hard work if you don't. Let's move on a little bit. I guess we're going to have a bit of a tour of the facility later, for myself and the Grow team here, but we're also going to tour with some doctors tomorrow, aren't we, as well? Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about why we're doing that later on. But as we're touring your facility, what should we be paying attention to in terms of the sort of innovation or practices that might be unique to Dalgety, or just the most important things that that you're going to? What are you going to tell the doctors? What are you going to say? Well, make sure you notice this and notice that.
Definitely, I think we'd like to highlight all the small details. And it's funny you mentioned wash your hands, and people should do that, and that is very important. You'll see a hygiene, but our real motto is we don't touch the flower. The first person to touch the flower is the patient. We when we're working in the canopy, when the plant's alive, we're holding stems and pulling leaves off, and we're trying to avoid touching the flower. When we're trimming, we always have a stem as a handle, and we trim with that. And really, there's some instances where you have to touch the flower a little bit, but that is our focus, is to not touch that. So yeah, when people are opening that, that they're probably the first person to ever touch that with a bare hand. Definitely with a bare hand. We have
gloves.
We have we have gloves.
So you're wearing
sterile gloves on. Yeah, absolutely.
And the hair nets and the rest. I'm sure we'll see in some clips later. But
exactly. But that's it. Those small details, and just effort the team puts in terms of go in our grow rooms, and not only are all our plants perfectly healthy, but all our slabs are lined up in a laser straight line. All of our drippers are perfectly coiled where it looks very nice and it's presentable. And again, it looks good, but it's functional as well. So we're not reaching in and accidentally pulling drippers out and depriving plants of water or something like that. So that that's really key. The team's effort. And on the same note, I guess the team morale. We take this very, very seriously, and this is our lives, and it's what we're really focused on. But we have a great team atmosphere. We like to have fun while we're working. Sometimes, plucking a whole room of leaves can be, not the most fun job in the world. And trimming 30 kilos of batch isn't, necessarily
getting RSI
the greatest thing.
Snipping away on those
so
things, yeah.
We like to try to keep it light and fun as we do that. So,
and it's the details in the the process, but also the design of the building as well, that we'll do our best to point out as we're going down there. So, the lights that we use were bespokely made for Dalgety. There'll be no difference in light level than greater than 5% anywhere in the room, and that helps with the consistency of the canopy to grow at the same rate. We put artificial wind into the rooms as well to just make sure there's no microclimates going in there at the same time. So level of humidity that we've got, we could control within 0.1% is the same across the whole room, and you do that by a soft movement of air going across the plants. And it's all been worked in and through the design.
Meticulously so, it sounds.
And even in I don't know whether we're giving away a trade secret here or not, but in our dry room, we actually have a humidifier as well. So, or the ability to put humid air in there, because we don't want to dry it too quickly. We want to keep it at that low and slow, steady pace. And just in case, for whatever reason, you have a mechanical failure, you're able to just keep that balance constantly and slowly. And there's not many people that put a humidifier in a dry room. It seems counterintuitive, but
yeah. We'll look this back in post, and I'll see if this little clip keeps the cut, and we'll know that it's a free trade secret for all of you out there that are watching.
Humidifier sales are going up tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's talk about the genetics and the process of picking those, because I think that's something that I think everyone's fascinated to hear. How do you go about deciding what types of cannabis you're going to grow here?
That is definitely something I could talk about the entire day with you, to be honest.
We'll do another podcast. We'll talk genetics. We'll have another Brady and Alex talk strains
that'd be great.
podcast at some point.
That'd be great. So I mentioned initially kind of, our thought was, speed to market was important. The other thing was, knowing we were running with one strain at that time, that strain kind of had to be a do everything. We needed it to yield well for us. We needed it to test well, knowing there was going to be a focus on that. And that was something I saw in Canada and other countries consulting as well, as focus on THC, which maybe talk on a bit later as well. But it needed to be good as flower. It needed to be a good extract strain. Buying tissue culture was a plant that I may have not seen in my life, so it was okay. I need to know what lineage would suit that, and kind of going through things that I had been producing that, I knew was going to yield well, was going to test well, was going to try to hit with as many people as possible, because sadly every strain isn't for every person. So we started seeds for these, and we've done our own hunting because, we want, something that works well in our facility. Also we just wanted the control. We want to know that what we're getting is what we're getting, what it's doing. So we bought a bunch of seeds, and we picked through our first set of trials, we picked strains that we thought the market was really going to want and what people were used to. So, again, from Canada, we'll have a lot. It is recreationally legal now, and people can just go to the store and buy it. And there is every product you can name is available to any person that wants it. So, I've seen this world basically with all these different strains available and flavor profiles and effects and all that stuff. And so, where to begin? So we're starting with strains that people are probably used to getting. Will be either from current medical suppliers or what they're used to off, the illicit market, we'll say. But we want something again that's going to test quite well in potency, and there's a lot of focus on potency. But we're also wanting strains that might be more labor efficient for us. So our first strain, that is probably her one downside, is it takes quite a bit of labor. So we want strains that are more labor efficient, obviously are going to yield quite well, are going to, say smell nice, but just provide a good experience for people, because taking medication doesn't need to be an awful experience either. So we're looking for that. Again, what future products could come out of these, they need to suit those as well. And then as we have kind of more and more trials going on, I want to focus less on THC and more on, experience, effects, and things like that, which is, not something you can really just say, oh, this strain is going to do this, and it is up to patients to find that. But we're putting out different, more diverse products that aren't on that same gene pool. Knowing there's more out there, our next projects we're working on, which I'm excited to kind of show you, is really like exotic flavor profiles, things that smell like oranges and smell like lemons and smell like flowers and just different things like that. And what makes those smells is, we kind of say, as terpenes, but terpenes really get all the credits. It's terpenes, terpenoids, thiols, volatile sulfur compounds, all of that kind of lumped together. But basically providing, a diverse list of products with a diverse list of terpenes and which will, all kind of affect people different and give different experiences, and just kind of put some things out there that I think maybe the UK market isn't quite aware is even existing. Mm-hmm. And, I hear people describe, stuff, oh, this is lemony and this is, but it's not. I think people are unaware that a strain can smell like a lemon rind. And, like people couldn't distinguish that if they were blind smelling it. And so that's what I'm really excited to put out is some new things that I think will shake up the market a little bit.
Tantalising us a bit there, and I'm very excited to hear more. I mean, just a brief follow up on that one. Let's say a year from now, how many flower products? Let's limit to just flower products. How many flower products are you hoping to have on the market under the Dalgety brand?
Well, it's going to depend, I guess, on sales volume and how fast the market grows. So
sure.
having diversity is important, but
in a best case scenario, what's the yeah?
I think we're kind of in the 3 to 5 or more if demanding. We have, we'll have more ready if the market demands, but because patients have to go through a kind of a trial and error, we'll say, where they have to find that thing that's right for them. It is also equally important that when they find that we can consistently provide that, and we put in all this effort to make batches consistent, but then that goes out of stock. And of course they think, oh, we'll try this. It is similar, but really
they want the same.
They want the same. I
think our seed library's got 25 genetics in there, but we're only focusing on first 3, and then grow up to 5 and 6, and who knows? And as more flower rooms come on, we can bring more in.
Don't run before you can walk, quite.
Exactly.
And get it right, and don't. One of the key challenges versus UK versus imported product is a lot of the patient complaints we're hearing is their product line runs out when they go for the repeat prescriptions, and being located in the UK, we're here to never run out of that once it's launched. And if demand moves away and we need to change it, then we have to do so. But
we'll hold you to that, and I'm sure patients will too. What you say on the growth conversations. All right, let's talk a little bit about the wider industry, and then we'll go have a look at some plants. What are some of the key misconceptions around growing cannabis for the UK medical market that you think need to be addressed? I mean, we talked about irradiation. Is there anything else that springs to mind? sort of key misconceptions. I think one of the common ones would be that it's primarily CBD and not THC, or that it's oils and not flowers. I was going to say the other one that I hear all the time at the moment.
Yeah, I've got family members that say, "How's your CBD business going?" And
Yes.
Can't help but explain it. I think, but equally on THC levels as well. I think even in experienced patient communities, they're very hung up on that. The higher the THC, the more potent that might be. And I think Brady's experience can tell us that that's definitely not the case.
What's your view on this, Brady, on the THC and the potency thing?
Exactly as James said. Like a 30% strain is going to be more potent than a 5% strain, absolutely. But everything now, like I read an article of someone else, and they were talking about their products and this and that, and it was 23%, and they're like, oh, it's just a low THC offering. And I was like, that is crazy that 23 is now a low THC, and people want this 27, 30%. And while they're great and have their view, I say all the time, we had our strain in Canada that was the most potent on our entire library was 23%, and we had ones that were 32, 33 consistently, and we had to put disclaimers on that saying, don't be fooled, it isn't just this number, there is more to it. And I think that is it, and I do get it to an extent that there's very limited data that patients have before they buy a product, and that is one of them. So it is human nature to say the higher that is, the better, and humans also make a nice round cutoff of 20% is good, 19% is bad, and it almost seems like that is now shifted to 25 is good and 24 is bad, and it's crazy. And
we definitely don't mind a 24. I mean,
no.
and I agree with you. Some of the ones I have on prescription, I won't name any of the products, but some of the 20s and 22s I have feel stronger than the sort of 27s, 28s, and even some of the 30s.
And I think it's worth mentioning your experience in growing a variety of strains. I mean, how many strains do you think you've ever grown and tested in your
honestly, thousands. We had a point where we had 1,400 varieties running at once through various trials and mothering and limited releases and all of that. And
out of one facility.
Yeah, out of one facility. Yeah, exactly. It's again constantly finding new, and it's difficult. And it's a niche skill set, and that's funny. Something we look into when people were hiring is not just do you have growing experience. That's probably one of the least important things. It's
attention to
are
detail.
You organized? Attention to detail.
I say that to people because that's my number one question is, how do I get a job in this industry? How do I get a job with a grower? And maybe I'll ask you that question in a second, as long as the answer is not apply on our website. But it's not about experience growing cannabis. That's a lot of the people who come to me having this conversation have experience of that, but they don't have experience of large-scale horticultural cultivation. They don't have experience of working in a farmer-grade facility and the attention to detail that you mentioned as well. There's so many factors that make a Brady what a Brady is.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
I mean, one of the growers here used to work on a strawberry farm as well, and had that closed environment of growing strawberries and a mass-produced product. And got another grower that used to work in orchids and worked in the Royal Gardens in Singapore, and that kind of, yes, the green fingers, but how can you do that on scale as well?
I've been there, and those orchids are incredible. So
we'll introduce you to them downstairs.
Oh, that's fascinating. So if there are people watching and you have experience of large-scale cultivation, then maybe that's the way. So let's answer the question: how does one? And not a Brady, because we know you've got this experience and from Canada. But how does one get a job with a cannabis cultivator?
I don't want to generate too much excitement. Currently, we've got our grow team is full at the moment, and we're really happy with everybody that we've got. There's nothing available at the moment. That being said, we've got big ambitions of being 5.5 times larger in 12 to 18 months' time. So we'll certainly need to be opening that up. And the best place to find out is, you said Tommy not to say it, but check on the website for when those things become available, really. What do you look for in a grower?
Yeah, honestly, open-mindedness, really. Like, I find one of the things with really long-time cannabis growers is that they think they have the one solution, and that is the be-all, end-all, and they can't adapt. And while many of those techniques will work, and we probably are employing, but as you again, it's not just growing that, it's complying with the regulations and all of the other things that go together. So, is being able to listen to someone and I might be able to show you something that, well, you think that, is the gospel to you, and it's something you've, believed your whole life. And I have many, many of these things that I've learned over time. They just are either incorrect or don't apply to large commercial growing. And so it's kind of, explaining all these things and why we do things, and never, hey, do this because I said so. This is why we do it. There's rationale to everything we ever do here. Nothing is a gut feeling or, there's some artistry to like reading the plants, I'll say, and recognizing when they're happy and not happy. And that is, invaluable. And that's where, guys coming from other horticulture industries as well have that skill. But it is, you need to be able to work for the plants. The plants don't take holidays, don't take vacations. You have to be able to get that and be part of that. And so, you can't understate passion. That is the one thing with previous passion growers is they love to be here. They want to be here. They want to, they enjoy watching the plants change day to day as much as I do. And
I was going to say, James gives you holiday time, right? Okay. But do you take it?
Well, what better place?
I can't get out of the place.
Just go home.
Yeah, weekends as well. And,
let's talk about a bit about the future. What do you see ahead in terms of pivots, I suppose? How do you plan to adapt? Because it's an industry that is it's ever changing. As you know, if you've spoken to the regulators here, things can change, things can move forward, things can move backwards. How do you plan to be adaptable to what's going on in the future?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's got a crystal ball, so we'll never.
Because it's such a hard question.
We'll never know. I mean, the level of facility that we'll show you around and we built is the control levels. We can make the plant do not anything we want, but if there was a requirement change, we can implement it in the system that we put in here from a growing perspective. But then there's product formats and how that's going to change. We mentioned that flower is 85%. You probably know better than me of all the prescriptions.
Something like that.
In the UK. I don't personally, from a personal level, I don't think in 5 years' time that number will be quite as high. Who knows where that number will be? So we're looking at other formulations as well. So we'll be bringing extraction hopefully this year as well, doing
Fantastic.
Extracted products and at an API level that can then go into the vaporized cartridges or sublingual tinctures or even into the soft gels as well. And we won't be doing all of that here. We'll need to be working with partners to be able to do that. But I can see there being a slight shift away from flower, the dominance that it has. That being said, if you look at the mature markets around the world, such as Canada, flower is still first and foremost, and the majority of the volume there. So while people think flower's going to fall away, I think it'll stay a little bit more resilient.
I think it will. Flower is king in cannabis, at least for now. I think you're right that we'll see that number. It'll get lower, but I don't know how. I don't think we'll get lower than 50% anytime soon.
No, I don't.
And I think that is slightly skewed in that the flower prescriptions are often a patient will get 3 or 4 different kinds, and their prescription will be made up. And I think that's often how we're calculating is they're getting 4 flowers to get a month's worth of medicine instead of 1 bottle of oil, which would be, or maybe 2 bottles of oil, which would be a month's medicine. It's 4 versus 2, and it looks like more, but it's anyway. You're quite right in principle. Last and final question: what excites you about the future of the medical cannabis space, other than that you're going to be a part of it come next week?
I mean, what excites me is just getting started. We've only just got started, but from a market in general, I think it's growing, 2 times every year. I think is the trend in the last few years, and what makes that market grow at such a rate. And there can be different campaigns, there can be efforts such as these podcasts and stuff that create awareness that medical cannabis is an option for some patients. But I think as more patient numbers grow, I think word of mouth is still probably the most powerful method of, if you spoke to a friend or a friend referred you, is to say, look, I think you should try medical cannabis, or at least go and speak to your doctor about it. It came from a trusted source. I think that would be a lot more effective than just a general statement that comes from a business perspective. So just the sheer numbers of people actually consuming medical cannabis and at least talking about it breaks down that stigma. And I think that 2 times multiple of the market every year will probably increase as it opens up. And we can see that happening already, although I think it's at the very early stages.
That's very exciting. And for you, Brady, what are you excited to?
Yeah, I'm personally excited to kind of chip away at the stigma that cannabis still has here a little bit, and I think that's important. And even in the last couple of months, it's changed, and being able to like talk to people about it and them not immediately judging that it's a bad thing, I think is really good. I think secondly, I'm just interested to shape the way that the industry unfolds a little bit, and with us as Dalgety putting out great products and good quality flowers, that kind of forces everyone else in following up behind almost has to do the same thing to succeed. So it allows us to build a really good quality market here. So yeah, that's exciting for me.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for sitting down and sparing time to talk to us all about what you're up to at Dalgety. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
We're going to go have a look at some plants
yeah.
and see all these beautiful things we've been talking about for ourselves. And thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Grow Conversations, and we'll see you very soon on another episode.
These are all new varieties, so that's why they're a little ununiform. Every plant on that bench is actually different.
And they're all roughly the same age?
Yeah, they're pretty much, Actually, all of those are a new variety, 45 different plants. That's the new variety, 45 different plants. And those are 2 of the 3 that we're just finishing pheno trials of. We actually have moms of some of those. So we actually have 4 plants, 1 production mom, 4 of another, 4 and 4, and we have a couple extra big ones that we were keeping. That was our mother room I explained earlier. If you notice, all those plants in the middle there, all of the branches and everything were the same size leaf. So those are production mums that we take cuttings off of, for uniform batches. So that's why we focus really on keeping everything uniform there, because we're actually cloning next Monday. So we've pruned those and now we've let them grow. And so we do that prune basically for exactly that reason. Cut out big branches, cut out small branches, allow basically everything to be the same, and then give it 2 weeks of recovery, and then we send them to the propagation room.
What are the chances? You can't plan that.
No, you cannot plan that.
Oh, they're babies.
So these are just transplanted. Again, looks super uniform. I can pretend this is a production batch, but actually this is the next round of phenotype trials we're doing. That's the 3rd strain to match the other 2 in the other room. And these are all 2 different strains, again, all different plants, but just these are maybe 2 days in the block. And we've got, again, really fast, vigorous root growth. They've just transplanted, so we've mopped the floors and cleaned kind of our way out, watered them through. So that's why it's dripping off as I've picked it up a bit. And they'll stay in these blocks for another 10 days or so, and then we'll put them on a bigger grow slab. We'll spend the rest of their life. So that is basically our temperature sensor and humidity sensors are in there. And it's in the box to prevent it from radiant heat from the light, basically. And then it's called an aspirator box. There's 2 vents, and there's a small computer desktop kind of fan, and it basically pulls the air in through over the sensor rather than getting hit by light and stuff like that. And even LEDs, even though they don't give off that much heat, if you're kind of in an older grow with HPS lights and stuff, you can really feel that sun feel on the back of your neck. But even still, it will kind of give a reading on the sensor. So kind of one of the more of the average temperature the plants are feeling than what the lights are giving off. So like I said, these are mothers that aren't going to flower, but keeping healthy, vigorous plants, what's coming off of these is going to go into flower. So treat it the same.
True what they say, bigger the roots, bigger the fruits.
Big roots, big fruits, absolutely. I say that all the time. I think the team's annoyed by hearing that. It's funny because it's the veg stage. You're growing the vegetative growth. It's just a byproduct. I'm really growing the roots at this point, filling the blocks with roots. Again, getting good, big root system allows you to take up lots of water, lots of nutrients, can allow you to build lots of biomass. Happy, healthy
nice green plants. You know, it's veg phase, so we're looking at the veg. Honestly, the only plants that I really treat as vegetative plants are mums that are never going to flower. But if this was a production batch, you know, it's pre-flowering phase, I'd rather say, than veg, because they're in this stage, most of our strains, for less than 2 weeks. So, you know, if they're in it for 10 days, it really isn't actually a good strategy to, you know, people say they change the spectra of the light, they change their fertilizer recipe, you know, hammer it for 10 days and then switch it. That drastic switch is actually pretty stressful for the plant. So we're essentially giving them flower feed early on because we're encouraging them to flower, encouraging them to build big roots. Luckily for us, those nutrient profiles kind of align, and those are 2 days old. We're going to keep them for 8 days total, so another 6-7 days on the block for a production batch, and then they go on a slab. These we just slabbed yesterday, so these are in a flowering. We're actually still vegging until tomorrow night, actually. So let's go have a quick look. So these are 3 new production batches. Pretty excited to share these. I was saying these have been on the block like we saw in the previous room. They've just been put on the slab yesterday. Again, key to good vigorous growth. One day that block's already rock solid on that slab. We'll give them just a day or two basically to root in, and also allows that slab to dry back a bit before we ship them to long night. So yeah, worth mentioning, you see the lines at the back, those are irrigation lines. So we basically have the 3 lines, our 3 recipes. So we can send those to any room, propagation to, and to flower. And basically we have different strengths of nutrients in there. So we feed young plants quite low. We feed medium strength to those plants we just saw. And then these start getting the most aggressive feed in late veg for the first 2.5, 3 weeks of flower. And then we start teetering back down to the medium feed. And then we finish off back at the light feed for 2 to 5 weeks, depending how hungry the strain is, basically. We call this praying. You see all the plants are kind of cupping and grabbing as much light as possible. You know, that's really showing healthy plants. But you know, praying is exhibited differently by different strains. These are different strain, that's a different strain. You can see they're up. They're not quite as showy about it as that strain is, but.
What are the slabs that they're potted into? So
it's the same material as block. All this is rock wool or stone wool. It's basically like a volcanic rock. It's melted down and pulled into fibers like candy floss.
Oh.
So it's inert, which is really nice. It doesn't bind nutrients like soil or soilless cocoa media would do. So basically what we feed the plants today, the plants can get today, and they don't have to struggle and wait for it to be released from the growing media for the plant. Also, it's really clean. You know, we don't have dirt on the table blocking the stuff. That means our water can flow right off. As soon as you get a little bit of standing water, you get algae growing. As soon as you get algae, it just grows everywhere. And you can see it is in the air everywhere, you know, pretty much on Earth. But, you know, we can see our cubes are very clean. It means we're not overwatering plants. As a result, you get good root growth because of that, and then it gets good healthy plants. So yeah, and it's, you know, transplanting, we're not digging holes, putting it in, filling it in.
Yeah.
We literally put it on, put the drippers on, fill it overnight usually, come in the morning, cut the bags, and transplanting is literally just taking that, putting it on top, putting the drippers back in. So it's nice, it's really scalable to really big size. So again, it's kind of building processes now that I know, you know, are going to be key in the future. Even sometimes, you know, like, why do we do this? This seems unnecessary. And it's like, no, a building habit. That kind of thing. Again, mentioned like the drippers, all the drippers curled nicely, all the slabs nice and straight.
Why are there the long metal poles at the top?
Well, you'll see in the next room. So, the room we're about to see after this is 2 weeks difference. It is going to seem crazy of me explaining it, but in 2 weeks, these plants are going to be to the top of the pole. So actually what we do is we install a netting trellising system because they get really, really heavy with big giant buds on them. So that netting holds them straight. We can also do some training with the plant and holding branches down. Even now we kind of we do this and we kind of train them a little bit wider. but naturally they're going to just keep growing back up and back up. So once we get to the net, we can space it out if we need. But really the goal is we fill this whole room. And it looks, there's lots of space right now, but actually these benches move because in the next room, when you see, and they're 6 feet tall on top of the benches, we have to actually be able to get in, and these plants go right to the edge of this. So it's really maximizing canopy space in our rooms to get the best out of them. These flower tomorrow night, so the following day, Saturday, will be the first day of flower. So these have just under 16 hours of
Just about to become women.
That's it. That's it. We do know they are, but so 2 weeks, literally 14 days difference. So you imagine those other plants were this big, right? We can see that same framework. We had kind of pruned to about there. Now you can see we've pruned up higher a second time, and we've actually done a de-leaf yesterday, the day before, which is just letting a bit of light back through. We don't want to have, small flowers that don't get light in the middle. They're not as big. They can be not as potent and things like that. Again, potency is key, but everything in terms of size that patient gets in their paw or their bag, all that's important. That it's just super uniform. So that's basically what we're after. So we've got a first prune. We'll do a second prune on all of these strains, potentially a third on this strain. But yeah, we're still very much in the summer phase here. It's still hot. Lights are getting much brighter. Still quite humid. It's about 70%, 72% in here. But now you can see all the strains on this side are preying quite aggressively, which means they want more. That's what you want. You give them everything and they still want more. You're doing some things right.
So the lighting level's what, 3 times higher in here?
Yeah, we're actually not quite at full. We're about 90%, so we're about 850, 900 micromoles, and we finish at about between 1,000 and 1,100. And yeah, I think where we just came from was about 450. Kind of pan in on some of these. So we're starting to get purples. We're starting to lose the green. It's much cooler in here. I think we're actually about 4.5 degrees cooler, and actually the big difference is the nighttime temperatures are significantly cooler than the previous rooms. And these have 2 weeks to go. This strain gets the low feed for a full 4 weeks at the end of its cycle. Just keep nitrogen levels low, flush those out of the plant. Really, really, really resinous strain. But key is that bud you're taking a picture of or video of, that's at the bottom of the plant, is as big, same size, same potency as the buds that are at the top of the plant, sorry.